This lesson gives you an overview of helper applications and plugins. Helper applications and plugins are necessary to view the graphics, pictures, movies and animations, as well as to play the sound clips that are incorporated into web pages, or accessed and downloaded via other internet resources, such as FTP sites, newsreaders and Gopher servers. This lesson will review helper applications and plugins, and will also demonstrate how these can be identified to the web browser software. You will also learn about streaming media on the internet. Viewer applications, also commonly referred to as helper applications, play a role in enabling you to take advantage of the various media types or file formats available on the World Wide Web. Viewers are programs that allow you to view graphics, pictures, movies, animations, and listen to sound clips that can be downloaded from FTP sites, accessed via newsreaders, or made available on Gopher servers and via web pages. When any type of link on a web page is clicked, a file is downloaded to the computer and displayed by the web browser. Most web browsers, however, are not capable of playing sound files or playing video segments. What enable you to view or play these different types of data are specialized applications that cooperate with but are separate from your web browser. When web pages contain links that point towards data files of a specific format instead of towards another web page, the data file is downloaded when the link is selected. Although the data file will be downloaded to your computer, you will not necessarily be able to see the data. Consider a sound file, for instance. Most web browsers will download the sound file to your computer, but without any customization or configuration, you will not be able to listen to the sound file. This is because most web browsers do not have the capability to play sound files. Unless an application for playing sound is installed on the computer, you will not be able to play the sound files via the web browser. In most cases, text will be displayed on the screen by the web browser software, without requiring another specialized application. When other media types are downloaded, the web browser will automatically execute the viewer application that has been configured for use with the associated file format. The web browser picks the appropriate application to display the file depending on its file format, file extension. These viewer applications earlier required that you identify them to your web browser, so that the browser knew which viewer application to use based on the file extension. The browser also had to be informed of the location of the viewer application. Fortunately, most modern web browsers will make most of these associations when they are being installed. For example, when you install Netscape Navigator using Windows 95, it looks at what associations currently exist within Windows 95 and creates those same associations in the browser. For example, say you double-click on a Word file in Windows Explorer. This will start up the Word application, assuming it is installed, and also open the file. The same sequence of events will take place if you click on a link to a Word file in your browser. Microsoft Internet Explorer browser works in a similar fashion. There may be instances, however, when there is a new file format that has not yet been configured in your system. In such instances, you may have to configure the helper application yourself. Many of these applications are shareware that are available via the internet. It should be noted that a helper application has no inherent relationship with the internet or any web browser. It is simply an application that has the capability to present a specific type of data. You should perform the following steps before data types other than those configured during installation can be viewed via your web browser. Decide which data file formats will be downloaded to your computer via the web or via other internet resources. Note that many formats are platform specific, that is, just for Macintosh or just for Windows 95. Acquire and install the applications capable of viewing the data file types that you will potentially download to your computer. You may already have many of these applications resident on your computer. Configure your web browser for each of these data file types and associated helper applications. Your web browser must know the complete directory path and the executable file name for all helper applications. Here are some examples of helper applications. Compressed files are often encountered on all types of servers on the internet. File compression is popular because of the utility it provides. Although there are different types of file compression and different software applications for compressing and decompressing files, compression basically converts a file into a much smaller size than it was in its uncompressed format. Some compression routines, when applied to certain file types, can yield compression ratios of 50:1. The most popular compression format found on the internet is pkzip from pkware Incorporated. Files compressed with pkzip can be distinguished by their .zip file extension, example, filename.zip. Another advantage of compressed files is the fact that several related files can be compressed into a single file. This makes locating, downloading and archiving files not only faster but very convenient. While you may rarely find a need to compress files, unless you upload files to a server, you might often download compressed files. In order to be able to install and use compressed files, they must first be decompressed. Most compression formats support a special type of compression that does not require a decompression application. These files, which have an extension of .exe, can be decompressed directly via their execution. The deceptive aspect of self-extracting compressed files is the fact that they masquerade as regular uncompressed executable files. Be careful when downloading any files with .exe file extension. It is a good idea to download them into a temporary directory. There is a very good chance that it is a self-extracting compressed file which may corrupt the contents of the directory in which you execute the file. When it decompresses itself, it may extract dozens or even hundreds of files. For this reason, users rarely configure browsers to automatically decompress these files. Most prefer to download the compressed files first and then decompress them so that the process can be closely monitored. Plugin is the evolution of the helper applications. Plugins are bits of code that add themselves to the web browsers. They add functionality to the browser without opening another application. In many cases, this means a video or other application files can be displayed online, just as is possible with GIF and JPEG files. Multimedia files can now be set to play when the page is opened, or offer additional types of interactivity that was not available before the advent of plugins. Plugins are developed by software companies who want their file types to be transmitted and viewed via the internet. Plugins do not necessarily work with every browser. For example, plugins designed for Netscape Navigator may not work with Microsoft Internet Explorer. Generally, plugins configure themselves in the web browser during their installation. One of the most popular plugins is the one available for displaying shockwave movies that are quite common on the internet. The first step to install a plugin is to find it on the internet. Once you locate the plugin, you have to download it to your computer. You have to choose the version of plugin you desire based on your operating system. After selecting your operating system, you can download the file. You can download the Shockwave plugin by clicking on a link to the program file. The browser will then ask you where you would like to save the file. This process is typical of most plugins. It is important to remember where you save the file because you will need to identify its location while installing it. The downloaded file may be compressed, in which case you would need decompression software to begin the installation. In most cases, it is an executable file, meaning it does not need decompressing and is either a program file or a self-extracting file. You can locate the file using Windows Explorer, Windows 98, or File Manager, Windows 3.1, and double-click on the file. The Shockwave plugin is self-extracting, so when you locate the file and double-click on it, you will see a dialog box. If you are using a different operating system, the rest of the installation will look different. When you click on the Next button, you will see the dialog box shown here. Click on the Install button. This will bring up the installation dialog box. After the installation is complete, the dialog box shown here will appear. Click on Finish to complete the installation. The main difference between plugins and helper applications is best illustrated by comparing how content is displayed. As we saw, a helper application brings up an entirely new window. Plugins work much more closely with the browser. Videos, sound and interactive animations can all be displayed within the browser window. This is why many helper applications have been replaced by plugins. There was a lot of excitement when multimedia first came to the internet. Images displayed natively in the browser whetted appetites for the day when sound, movies and animation could all be displayed just as easily. Though the playback of such files quickly became a reality, there was a significant cost, a cost that measured in download time. Simple graphics could take minutes to load. Sound files and movies of any sort took much longer. As applications could not begin playback until the files had been completely transferred, the patience of all but the most determined of users were usually exhausted. The answer came in the form of new streaming technologies. The concept is simple, even if technically complicated. When the user accesses a file, the server begins sending the file in a start to finish sequence. The client software receives the stream into a buffer. When a set portion of the file is received, the client can begin playback from the buffer and not have to wait for the complete download. Advances in streaming allowed for better compression so that the total size of the file would be smaller, and degrees of compression and stream rate could also be specified, permitting the author-creator to define the quality. These streaming technologies are now being used for every type of multimedia, including audio and video. There are many streaming media applications and plugins available, but probably the most popular is Real Player from Real Networks. With this plugin, you will be able to access files and broadcasts that are formatted for the Real Player. The files might be audio clips of recently released music titles or videos of news stories. The broadcasts are mostly from radio stations and a few public television stations. Whether a file or broadcast, when Real Player accesses sound or video, it will build up a buffer and then immediately start to play. Although Real Player is a plugin, it often acts more like a helper application, in that a separate Real Player window will appear with audio-video controls. Website designers can embed video within a page, but in most cases when you click on a link to a Real Player file or broadcast, Real Player will display it in its own window. Websites will often identify media you can play with Real Player by including links to either Real Audio or Real Video. The Real Player can run both media types. There are also several sites on the internet such as AudioNet, www.audionet.com, that have many links to live broadcasts. Real Player itself contains buttons that automatically connect you to streaming media content. When you install it, the buttons have generic labels such as Music that will take you to the Real Network site, where you can establish specific sites for each button. Although streaming media is an exciting development on the internet, bandwidth remains an issue. You will notice that the video sometimes appears jerky and the audio is sometimes mono as opposed to stereo. This is because of the limitations of the internet bandwidth and more often the very limited bandwidth available on your own system. To use Real Player, you should be using at least a 28.8 kbps modem. You should use at least 33.3 kbps for better sound, while video quality requires 56 kbps access. Real Networks also suggests that you have your monitor set to at least 16-bit color to take full advantage of the streaming video.